everybody, welcome to Saving Vegas. And today I have a set of Cerwin Vega AT-8s and a set of Cerwin Vega VS-80s. I'm going to be going through both of these speakers inside and out, going through a few of the differences and some of the similarities that these speakers have. Both of these speakers are a two-way design with a 1-inch tweeter and an 8-inch woofer. I've already pulled out the woofer, tweeter, and the crossover on one AT-8 and one VS-80. We're going to take a look at those drivers separately. We're also going to take a look at the crossover, and I've quickly drawn up some schematics for the crossover and just go through some of the differences there. But before I dig too deep into these speakers, I'm going to go over some of the specs.
All right, we'll start with power handling. Both speakers are rated 5 to 100 watts. Frequency response, the AT-8 is 38 Hertz to 22 kilohertz, and the VS-80 is 38 Hertz to 20 kilohertz. Sensitivity, this is at 1 watt at 1 meter. They are both 94 dB. Nominal impedance, both are 6 ohms. The woofers, both are 8-inch paper cone woofers with a 1.55-inch voice coil. Tweeters, the AT-8 is a 1-inch mylar and the VS-80 a 1-inch polycarbonate. Crossover frequency, the AT-8 is 3000 Hertz, the VS-80 3600 Hertz. Gross weight, 26 pounds, this is for both speakers. Now for some dimensions. The AT-8 is 12 inches wide, 21 inches tall, and 10 inches deep. The VS-80 is 10.9 inches wide, 20 inches tall, and 11.5 inches deep. Now for the internal enclosure volume. The AT-8 is 0.87 cubic feet and the VS-80 0.89 cubic feet, and this is minusing the size of the port.
Okay, now we're going to take a look at the woofers and the tweeters on both of these speakers. We'll start with the woofers. The VS-80s have the VSW8 woofer in them, and you're always going to find this stamped on the back of the magnet. Sometimes I've even seen it stamped on the basket somewhere. These are manufactured in August 1993, and the AT-8, those model numbers are, this one is an ATW8 and manufactured in July 1995. This woofer was like this when I bought it, I believe. Maybe a cat or a dog. Some animal had got to it and did puncture it a little bit. I have already kind of glued it from the back side. I can't really get some light. There we go. A little bit of glue on the back side and just trying to plug off that hole. It's unfortunate, but what are you going to do? So this guy is probably going to be in need of a recone in the near future, but everything still operates properly. Yeah, anyways. So also you got a smooth cone surface on the VS-80 woofer, and the AT woofer, they have the ribbed cone. If you measure the resistance of these speakers kind of just as they sit, so you're just kind of, it's not their impedance, but it's going to be their resistance in ohms. These should read somewhere around 3 to 3.5, 3.6 ohms, something like that. You order new surrounds, it's the same surround that fits on both of these woofers. They both have an angled attached surface to the cone. So in other words, if you order foam surround for one of these, it's going to fit both the AT and the VS series. So now with that out of the way, we'll move on to the tweeters. Now, we'll note too here on some damage on here. This is very common, and I see this quite a bit, especially on these VS tweeters. So this is all kind of part of the wave guide. It is very, very thin plastic here, and then if you even look, this one's cracked and probably going to break fairly soon as well. You have to be really careful when you're tightening these back down, if you are pulling them out for whatever reason, that you don't over tighten that screw, because it's going to break the plastic part of this. So the VS-80, it's a 1-inch tweeter and the model number is VS-T1. This is an 8 ohm tweeter, and the AT-8s, now it doesn't say it on the back here. This is kind of, from what I believe is like Cerwin Vega's stock number, but this is a DT3 tweeter is what they call it. And these were built a little bit better. You don't normally see these crack as often as the VS tweeter does, but so it's got a little different diaphragm in it. It's just made out of a different material. Okay, so that's the tweeter and the woofers. For both these speakers, I'm going to move on to the crossovers, get them out here, and we'll take a look at those. But getting to the basics on the crossovers, to the terminal part of it that is attached to the crossover, the AT-8 has these push pin terminals, which I believe you could probably fit a 12 gauge wire in there, probably nothing bigger than that. Not that you need to be using much more than a 12 gauge wire for these speakers. These don't fasten, there's no fasteners that attach these into the cabinets themselves. It just kind of pushes in, and that's why they've kind of got these ribs here. So it just kind of goes in and just pushes in. To whereas the VS-80 has nice 5-way binding posts, a little larger terminal. I do like these because you can use your banana plugs or your spade terminals, whatever you want, or just your bare wire, just by loosening these and then just sticking your bare wire into the holes there and tightening them down. It just gives you a few more options, and is just a much nicer speaker terminal. And unlike the AT-8, these are fastened in with 4 screws. So I do like this style a little better. So what they've done here is the AT-8s have used 2 black wires for their negative. Right here where it says T negative and W negative, so that's for your tweeter and woofer negatives. It doesn't matter which one you use for which. They're both negative. They're both going to the negative terminal. It does not matter which one goes to which, but they are labeled. So it uses the 2 black wires for your negative, and then blue wire to go to your positive on your tweeter, and then red wire going to the positive on the woofer. The VS-80 pretty much did the same thing. They keep it quite simple, but you've got 2 blue wires and you got 2 red wires. One that does have black stripe on it, and same with the red, it's got a black stripe on it. So both of these crossovers do not filter the woofer whatsoever. So this is just simply to the negative on the woofer, and then the solid red is to the positive on the woofer. The blue wire, essentially the same thing. Solid blue goes to the positive on the tweeter, and then the blue with the black stripe goes to the negative on the tweeter. So they made it quite simple for hooking it up that way. And I'm going to pull out the two schematics that I just kind of quickly drew up, just kind of by looking at the circuit board on the tweeter itself. And I just kind of drew schematics up because there's something a little different happening with the VS-80 than there is in the AT-8 in their crossovers. So here I have the schematics for the AT-8 that I've drawn up. So we're going to start at the positive incoming. It comes straight in, and then we're going to come down. And this is the red wire that goes to the woofer, which has nothing on it. There's nothing filtering the woofer whatsoever, like I had mentioned. The VS-80 also has the woofer hooked up this way too. There's nothing filtering it either. What I want to focus my attention on is to the tweeter signal path. So if you go from the positive incoming to the CB1, which is your tweeter protection, and then it goes to C1, which is a 4.7 microfarad electrolytic capacitor. From there you go on, and then there's this L1, which is a 0.25 millihenry inductor. That is hooked up to, I've got it shown going to the black, so it's filtered to ground. So that inductor is allowing low frequencies to pass to ground. And then we jump back up
keep going to the C2, which is a 7 microfarad, also an electrolytic capacitor, and then your blue wire going to your positive on your tweeter. So now, with that AT-8, we're going to take a look at the VS-80 schematic. And like I mentioned, woofer is not filtered, and it looks pretty much identical. So let's start from the positive incoming, going to the CB1, that is your tweeter protection, and then to the C1, which is a 3.5 microfarad electrolytic capacitor. And then, right, just like the AT-8, we get to this L1, which is a 0.3 millihenry inductor. So same thing, it's allowing a certain amount of low frequencies to pass through onto ground. Then we go back up to the C2, which is a 7 microfarad electrolytic capacitor. And from there, that is going to the blue wire with the black stripe on it, which shows going to the negative on the tweeter. Now this is where I don't think I realized this right away, and I had to look at it a couple times. So let's look back at the AT-8 schematics, where everything's laid out the same, but coming off of that C2, so coming off of that 7 microfarad capacitor, it goes to the blue wire going to positive, whereas the VS-80 has it going to the negative. So the difference is with these two is the tweeter on the VS-80 is reversed. So there's a few reasons why you would hook up a driver in reverse polarity, and it all has to do with the kind of time arrival of all the drivers, whether it's in the crossover during your filtering process, depending on what order crossover you're using. Sometimes it gets shifted 90 degrees or so, or whatever, and then it has to be corrected. And this is simply just done by reversing the polarity on the tweeter for an improvement. Now I'm looking at both schematics and they're so identical, it just really made me wonder, why is one reversed and not the other? So because of this, I am going to try reversing the tweeter on the AT-8, because that is the one thing I kind of had an issue with, is it seemed a lot more forward, and it was almost a little exhausting at louder volume levels, whereas the VS-80, it was a lot quieter, but it also seemed not as detailed either. So I'm really curious what I'm gonna get when I reverse the tweeter on the AT-8. I'm gonna try it out. Unfortunately in this video, I did not do that. I'm just simply sticking to the basics and giving you guys a comparison of the way these two speakers came from the factory. Now with that out of the way, let's move on to the cabinets on these speakers. The AT-8 cabinets, like we went through, are a little bit larger, and I do kind of like the design of the front of this speaker. They've got the front baffle recessed and this nice little angle all around the outside, whereas the VS front baffle isn't really recessed. It's got a little cut in all the way around, and they do have the woofer recessed in a little bit, where the AT-8 does not. Both good looking speakers and a fairly good size speaker for a bookshelf. You can probably already tell the port sizes are slightly different. I do believe the VS-80, the port is, I think, 2 3/4 of an inch hole, and then the AT-8 is a 2-inch. So nothing really that crazy to look at in here. This is the damping material that they used. They're both pretty much the same. And if you look, they did pretty much the same thing with both of them. So it's not, that material wasn't used on every part of the inside of this cabinet. If you look, the top and the one side does not have any damping material on it. And so the back is pretty much covered up to the port, and then the bottom is covered, this side is covered, and then top's left bare, this side's left bare, and then yeah, something just the bottom, and then the front baffle
doesn't have anything on the inside either. Going to the VS-80, pretty much same situation. The back is covered. The one side has it, and then it comes around and covers the bottom. And then this side has nothing. And the top doesn't have any baffling in it either, nor does the front baffle. So the way they put their damping material in there was exactly the same. So I do want to get both of these speakers hooked up and just kind of compare the sound difference between the two of them, which is, you know, probably one of the more important things. I don't like doing these comparisons unless I can use both speakers from both sets. Not really the way I like to do comparisons for sound. I'm probably going to give it a shot anyways. I'll do it and I'll just show you guys. Again, I don't know if you're really going to notice much difference in sound over this video on YouTube with compression and all that lovely stuff, but I haven't really listened to these a whole lot. The AT-8s haven't really listened to them much at all. The VS-80s, it's been a while since I've had them hooked up and listened to them, but I will hook up the two that are working properly. They'll have a little bit of damage on the surround of the one VS-80 woofer, and actually this ATW8 woofer is no good. So I'm waiting for my replacements for that. I still haven't got them yet. But I will hook both of these up and listen to them. I'm probably just going to be using I use this as my just kind of for my test bench here when I'm reconing or refoaming speakers to run test tones through and whatnot. It's not a bad little amplifier. It's a Kenwood receiver, I think from like the early 90s, somewhere around there. I'll use this guy just because it's here. Both of these speakers rated at 100 watts. I mean, you don't really need much more than that anyways, but yeah, I'm gonna get these things hooked up and then give them a good listen. Okay, I'm getting all set up to do the sound test now. I'm using my Rode microphone into the transmitter there, and then it actually runs to here and then into my phone. So this is what I've been using, and I already did some editing on my previous footage that I just shot, and I gotta apologize. I have all the mess here, a deep freeze in the corner there, and I forgot to shut it off while I was recording. So if you notice a little noise in the background, it was just that freezer running. I've got my speaker selector here. I'm gonna switch in between the VS-80 and the AT-8. Now I just want to push these a little bit. I got the volume about 3/4, the loudness all the way down, and both the treble and the bass defeated. And yeah, let's see what they can do.